It's an open invitation from President Lai, and it's ignored by the Irish government. Now, that's successive governments, and they cling on to this outdated policy, which I think needs to be reviewed.
In July of 2025, John McGuinness, the Leas-Cheann Comhairle, or Deputy Speaker of Ireland's Parliament, led a cross-party delegation of lawmakers on a visit to Taiwan. During the trip, the group met with President William Lai, senior government officials and representatives from industry and academia. In this episode, Deputy McGuinness discusses his meeting with President Lai, who welcomed Ireland's recently announced National Semiconductor Strategy and proposed a greater collaboration between the world's top microchip manufacturer and Ireland in developing advanced technologies. But we ask, how likely is the Irish government to pursue such cooperation, given the diplomatic sensitivities surrounding China's position on Taiwan? And to what extent has Taoiseach Micheál Martin's top-down leadership style shaped Ireland's foreign policy in this area? Stay with us as we dive into the details of these questions and much more in our upcoming conversation with Deputy John McGuinness. Hello and welcome to Perspectives with Neilo. I'm your host, Neil O'Sullivan. Here on the podcast, our mission is to raise awareness of topics that often go underreported on mainstream media, but truly deserve your attention. We focus on stories related to human rights, freedom and democracy, and their core values, all of which are being increasingly threatened worldwide. Authoritarian regimes have become more effective at co-opting or circumventing the norms and institutions established to support basic liberties, and at subsidizing others who wish to do the same. They have succeeded in shifting global incentives, jeopardizing the consensus that democracy is the only viable path to prosperity and security, while encouraging more totalitarian approaches to governance. In particular, the regimes of China and Russia have gained enormous power in the international system, and freer countries have seen their established norms challenged and fractured. Many international organizations, including Freedom House, say the current state of global freedom should raise alarm among all who value their own rights and those of their fellow human beings. One of the countries on the very front line in this fight to maintain freedom and democracy is Taiwan. Located just 150 kilometers off the coast of China in the Western Pacific, Taiwan has been a democracy since the 1990s. In fact, it is frequently referred to as a beacon of democracy in Asia and ranks just as high as many European countries in democracy indices. Taiwan faces cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and every shade of grey warfare you can imagine on a daily basis. The source of these attacks is the People's Republic of China, which is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. They claim Taiwan as their sovereign territory and seek to annex it, but have never controlled or occupied Taiwan for even a second in their entire existence. The CCP have for years tried to weaken international support for Taiwan to further isolate the country, coercing its diplomatic allies and trading partners, as well as interfering in international organizations to block Taiwan's membership. Thankfully, the EU's engagements with Taiwan have remained relatively strong, and although the EU and Taiwan do not have diplomatic relations, trade and cultural links are very active. The EU considers Taiwan a reliable and valued like-minded partner in Asia and is Taiwan's largest foreign investor and third largest trading partner. Bilateral trade in goods runs at around 50 billion euros annually, and the EU operates a trade office in Taipei along with 17 EU member states. As Ireland prepares to assume the presidency of the European Union in the second half of 2026, questions are emerging about Dublin's cautious approach to Taiwan. Why does Ireland remain an outlier among EU member states in its engagement with Taipei? And to what extent does China's influence in Ireland and fear of offending China shape this stance? Coming up, we speak with John McGuinness, Fianna Fáil TD for Carlow, Kilkenny, Leas-Cheann Comhairle of Dáil Éireann and Chairman of the Ireland-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Association. He joins us to discuss Ireland's evolving relationship with Taiwan and his recent visit to the island. Deputy McGuinness shares his insights from his meeting with President William Lai, who welcomed Ireland's National Semiconductor Strategy and suggested that Taiwan and Ireland could deepen cooperation in this strategically important sector. We also explore other areas of potential partnership, from trade and agri-food exports to education and innovation, and ask whether Ireland is missing valuable opportunities by keeping its distance, particularly at a time when many countries in the world are diversifying trade links. Finally, we discuss Micheál Martin's leadership of Fianna Fáil, examining how his top-down style may be influencing government policy on Taiwan. And we look at how the Ireland-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Association is working to raise awareness of Beijing's ongoing efforts to isolate Taiwan, despite unwarranted objections from the Chinese Communist Party. And one last thing before we get to the interview, we'd like to take a moment to ask for your support. If you enjoy our podcast or find value in our discussions, the best way to support us is by subscribing or following us on your favourite podcast app. Unfortunately, many of our listeners aren't subscribed yet, and your support can make a huge difference. Join us in raising awareness. Subscribe now and help us to keep the conversation going. And thank you in advance for your support. Now, on to our interview with Deputy John McGuinness. So, John, thank you for taking the time to chat. I wanted to start by asking you, because back about 3 years ago, at the end of 2022, you were one of the first people I interviewed on this podcast, and we talked about the relationship between Ireland and Taiwan. And back then, I think we would have both agreed that maybe there was a little bit of room for growth there, especially when you compare with some of our other European neighbours and how they engage with Taiwan. So, I mean, how do you think Ireland's relationship with Taiwan has developed in recent years?
Well, from the Parliamentary Friendship Association that exists between Ireland and Taiwan, that link has become far stronger. And more members of the Irish Parliament are now interested in what is happening in Taiwan, and are interested in the attitude of China towards Taiwan. So from the political perspective, I would say that the interest has grown and strengthens, which then feeds into the strengthening of the other relationships that are there, be they cultural, commercial, political, all of that. And it highlights, I think, the advantages of Taiwan in terms of a commercial marketplace for world trade.
And I know, as chairman of the Ireland-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Association, you've always been a strong and consistent advocate for building better relations with Taiwan, and you've led many Irish parliamentary delegations to Taiwan in the past. I believe you led a parliamentary delegation visit to Taiwan in July, and you met Taiwan's President William Lai. So I was curious, what was it like meeting the President, and what kind of things did you talk about?
Well, I think I've met every president since President Ma. And I've been there for the election of a president and for the election of the mayor of Taipei. And I've always been impressed by their commitment to democracy and the manner in which the votes are counted quickly, unlike Ireland.
Very quickly, yeah.
And the result comes out. So the meetings with the presidents that I have had over all of those years, including the current President Lai, have been extremely positive and constructive. The delegations that I would have brought to Taiwan would focus on the trade issues, trade with Europe from Taiwan, trade with Ireland in the context of that, and trying to strengthen those trade connections. It hasn't been easy because when you begin to open up trade with Taiwan, there is the distance factor, language barriers, all of that type of thing. But we've managed to encourage Irish companies to look at Taiwan in terms of our trade outwards to Taiwan. And now that Taiwan is looking beyond itself in terms of investments, it recently constructed a plant in Germany it's going to be one of the biggest plants for the manufacture of semiconductors. And I think that's a significant move. So the President, when we met, and indeed the Minister for Foreign Affairs, would elaborate on all of those activities. And they have always been positive and outward looking in terms of their response to us. And if there's a disappointment in it for me as part of that group and part of one of the leaders of delegations out there, is that Ireland does not make significant gains in the context of the trade that could be achieved out there. I'm thinking here in my own constituency of Tirlawn and the whole agri-business and agri-food business and the development of that. And there's so many opportunities out there that we miss.
You probably notice when you visit Taiwan. I mean, I notice when I visit Taiwan that if you stay in a hotel or go to the supermarket or eat at a restaurant, a lot of the butter you see there is German butter or Dutch butter. You see Italian marmalade, Spanish pasta, British biscuits. You see some Irish alcohol products, but not very much else, right? It seems like with a population of 23 million and, a fairly affluent society, there must be a very good market there for top-class Irish products like we have, like the agri products we have. It's a pity we're not taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, you see the things out there that I have seen because I was a trade and commerce minister in the past. Mm-hmm. So you tend to look at all of the market and say, well, hang on, we should be in there with our beef or our lamb or our butter and all of that. And indeed Irish whiskey, because there's a good whiskey market out there. But when you don't have presence on the ground in Taiwan, you lose out on all of those markets. And I have explained this continuously over the years with many ministers, the leader of my own party and others, that we're at a disadvantage if you're not there. Because it's not just about Taiwan, it's about the confidence to be in Taiwan to trade and then to use that base to get further into the other Asian markets. And that type of confidence, if it was expressed by government, that would encourage business people to have the same level of confidence and then to pursue the markets that are out there and pursue the markets that are there beyond Taiwan. And really, we've been fighting an uphill battle to get that presence in Taiwan. And while we focus on the business aspects of that relationship with Taiwan, we acknowledge the political issues that are there between China and Taiwan. But Germany is represented in Taiwan, Italy, the European Union itself has an office there. So I think that as a small country within that big framework of larger countries, we need to really make big decisions around our presence out there.
Yeah, and staying with that EU-Taiwan relationship, I think it's like 15 or more EU states have their own trade offices there. And in fact, back in September in the Dáil, Taoiseach and Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Simon Harris, mentioned in a reply to a written question from Deputy Malcolm Byrne, who was in one of your delegations visiting Taiwan, Simon Harris mentioned that the EU seeks to strengthen economic and trade relations with Taiwan. But when it comes to Ireland, he mentioned that the IDA actively manages the Taiwanese market from its Singapore office, and Enterprise Ireland manages client needs from Taiwan through its Hong Kong office. So unlike many of our EU neighbours, Ireland's doesn't have a trade office there. I mean, what's stopping that? I mean, like you said, if you want to have impact, you really need a presence on the ground.
Well, if you're focused on trade and an interaction with Taiwan, then the logical thing to do is to open an office there, to have a presence, to engage with people, with society out there, and then with the bigger companies, where you can make a connection between an Irish company and its supply chain into the likes of Taiwan. But the decision is always affected by the politics, unfortunately, of Taiwan, China. And in Ireland, in the Foreign Affairs section, there is what I would call an old-fashioned approach to the situation between Taiwan and China. So politically, Ireland would say that we don't want to offend China. I don't see it that way. I see a huge market out there, great opportunities for Ireland, no offence to China, and like other countries from the EU, I see nothing wrong with opening an office out there. And Malcolm Byrne, in asking that question, in participating in a delegation to Taiwan, was attempting to build on the general consensus within the Dáil that an office is needed in Taiwan. You cannot deal with a country of 23 million people from another jurisdiction.
Yeah. I mean, another reason to maybe open an office there is something that I see President Lai mentioned in his press release after his meeting with you and your delegation. And he referred to the fact that the Irish government launched its national semiconductor strategy in May. And he added that, I believe that going forward, Taiwan and Ireland can bolster collaboration so as to upgrade the competitiveness of our respective semiconductor industries. Together, we can help build a values-based economic system for democracies. That seems like a remarkable opportunity. I mean, all those other EU countries are clambering to build connections on the semiconductor area.
It's an open invitation from President Lai, and it's ignored by the Irish government. Now, that's successive governments, and they cling on to this outdated policy, which I think needs to be reviewed. And I have also argued that because Ireland is small in terms of Europe and Asia and Taiwan, there is a need for us to strengthen our collaboration with the other European countries so that as a European Union, the policy would be we trade in Taiwan, we have a presence in Taiwan, and the semiconductor business is expanding rapidly, and Taiwan is now playing a role in Europe. We weren't at the table to ask for the location of that particular manufacturing plant to be in Ireland. Germany was. They were there, actively involved, and they got the plant.
And Italy has also gotten a plant. Lombardy got one recently that was announced. And I think the Lithuanians, the Czechs are building research and other relationships with Taiwan in the semiconductor area. But this is like, I mean, I have to ask, how could Minister Peter Burke not take this seriously if he wants Ireland's national semiconductor strategy to be taken seriously? In other words, if you don't have connections with the top semiconductor producer in the world, how can we be taken seriously in Ireland?
Well, we met many universities when we were out there on this occasion, and I was struck by the collaboration between universities within Taiwan and then between Taiwan and other European countries, sharing the cutting-edge developments that are taking place not only in semiconductors but in education and in general trade and what society is now looking for in terms of general technologies. And I was struck by how advanced they are and how advanced education is in Taiwan. We have so much to learn from them. And there is an interchange in place between Taiwan and Ireland in terms of students. So we're not taking advantage of that at all in terms of sending our students to Taiwan so that they can experience at first hand what is happening at the coalface of these developments. And that saddens me. But there's a top-down approach in Ireland in terms of policy and supporting that, dated position in relation to Taiwan. And it's for our political leaders to, I think, embrace the developments through Europe that are taking place in establishing a firm on-the-ground relationship with Taiwan. and that policy of preventing that has to change radically.
You mentioned there, our Department of Foreign Affairs when it comes, and their guidance when it comes to engaging with Taiwan and so on. And last time when we spoke about engaging with Taiwan, you'd mentioned the fear of offending China among the Irish government was a factor. And previously in 2018, we saw the bizarre situation when the then Ceann Comhairle Sean O'Farrell, wrote letters to TDs and senators advising them that contact with Taiwan would, in his words, offend our Chinese friends. And, China commentators often talk about the term the anaconda in the chandelier, which is a phrase coined by an American professor, Perry Link. He used it to describe the nature of censorship and political control often employed by China. So given that, we've seen Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi tell UN High Commissioner Kaja Kallas that China does not want Russia to lose the war. I'm curious if this new information, this new side of China that we've seen since the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, has that not influenced Irish government ministers and Irish political elected representatives on their position towards China?
Well, the world that we live in now is changing so rapidly that countries are struggling to find their safe place in terms of relationships with every other country. And there is a deep concern that we'll be on the wrong side of what's happening. So unless the European Union moves as one and presents itself as one, we won't change the narrative around Taiwan and China. And that change requires political leadership. So in my position as Leas-Cheann Comhairle, I'm conscious of the fact that I can't stray into policy matters in terms of the country our relationship outside of Ireland. But that shouldn't prevent either me, the government, or any other agency from engaging on a different level with the likes of Taiwan. So you park the political side, like other countries are doing, and you follow the example being set by Germany, Italy, and so on, and you're walking a line. I understand that. But in countries like this, you have to walk that line, satisfying a political position, but at the same time not willing to stand back and allow others to take over a huge market that's there. That doesn't offend anyone, in my opinion. And China has to realise that too. We all have our citizens to look after. And in a fast developing world around technologies and even understanding history and the role that was played in the past between China and Taiwan, that's all part of our history and heritage and of the world. And leaders have to take a much broader view and allow a lot more to happen between countries. And you mentioned China and the war in Ukraine and so on. These are things that are going to level themselves out over time. Where the world will actually land after that is not yet known. And as we go to that particular outcome and wonder what will it be, we're going to need friendships. We're going to need to be together as a European Union. And we're going to have to adjust our policies. We can't remain stuck in the rut. And that's where we are now.
You mentioned political leadership there. And As a result of the failure of Jim Gavin's presidential campaign, Micheál Martin's leadership of Fianna Fáil has come under the spotlight, and there have been accusations that his leadership style is very top-down or controlling. He says it's not controlling, but of course, perception in the party may be different. So I'm wondering, in regards to like Ireland's relations with Taiwan and this type of policy, and the fear of repercussions from China, is this an area where this style of top-down leadership has played a big impact or influenced this type of policy?
It has clearly had a major impact on the attempt to grow relationships with Taiwan, observing the position that China holds. And I said that you need strong leadership in this country to change that in conjunction with the efforts made by the European Union. But if you go back to what's happening here, it has always been the case that there has been a top-down approach in relation to policy around Taiwan. Now, I was one of the people that accused Micheál Martin of having a very centralised governance of the party, and I stand by that, and it continues to this day, to the extent that at various times delegations were asked not to go to Taiwan with no reasonable explanation given. Now, the same applies with other parties, that they would attempt to influence their members not to go to Taiwan. And that feeds in then to the national narrative, if you like, where you're meant to ignore Taiwan. Well, politics has always been about the ability to get involved, to make changes, to bring about a reaction or an action to policies of other countries and debate around that. So it's foolhardy to think that you can control members of parliament and control what's happening elsewhere in the world. You look at your own country, you decide what's best for it, and if you're in a union, as we are with other European countries, you work with them to achieve what you can within their set of goals and policies. And it's quite clear that there is a division around Taiwan because you have 17, I think, countries now represented in Taiwan. You have a European office in Taiwan. So I don't know what the big deal is with government here in Ireland trying to prevent what is a very positive development for Ireland.
Right, especially with our European presidency coming up in 2026. If we could go back maybe again to your visit to Taiwan in July, we constantly hear how China claims Taiwan as their sovereign territory, and the daily incursions by Chinese military into Taiwan's water and airspace. Did you gain any insight from President Lai or others you met there, how this threat level is being perceived by the Taiwanese government?
Well, what struck me about Taiwan on this occasion was the fact that the people there are so used to flyovers and difficulties in the Taiwan Straits and so on, that they take it as part of their normal life. And it's anything but normal. When we were there with the noise of jets or the reports of what's happening of events that you can see. But there's other things going on in Taiwan which would lead me to believe that various maybe political parties, organisations are being infiltrated by those that are coming from China to Taiwan. And we saw that in the context of the recall votes that were demanded by the different constituencies of people that signed up to that request. I understand that those candidates or members of Parliament were all re-elected. But there's a lot of instability in society there caused by outside players. And that's sad to see, because the Taiwanese people have always shown, not just to us, but you can see it in their daily lives. They go about their business quietly, privately. They make their contribution to society in Taiwan. And they're not really interested in conflict. They just want to get on with their lives and enjoy their lives. It's 23 million people. It's a democracy. And we have to continue to go back to that point. It is a democracy, and it is worth defending as a democracy. And people might, look at China and Taiwan and maybe be led to believe that the democracy in Taiwan was not the type of democracy that we know. It is absolutely the type of democracy that we know. People have bought into it. They have a great way of life. They have a good, developing, middle-class society out there. And we should not ignore that.
I mean, yeah, it's very interesting that you talk about the infiltration or the outside forces that are trying to change the narrative and create conflict, or make things difficult for people on the ground. I mean, but I also noticed that, reading news headlines and so on, that China frequently tries to isolate or block Taiwan's participation in international bodies. And this is something that also was brought up in the Dáil by, I think, Deputy Barry Ward in September, another member of your delegation. And he talked about China's attempts to block Taiwan from the International Civil Aviation Organization and from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and Interpol and the WHO and so on. And it was good to see support in the Dáil for speaking up for Taiwan's participation in these international organizations.
Yeah, and I've seen more and more members speak up in the Dáil and in the Senate. In fact, the Senate devoted a full debate to Taiwan, and that's happening out of interest and out of an understanding of the current situation in Taiwan. The questions that are being asked through parliamentary questions are probing about what's happening in Taiwan and our attitude towards all of that. And I've seen that intensified in recent times. And I think, countries, I keep going back to the European Union and Ireland's part in it, they have to be stronger. They have to understand and speak out on behalf of democracies. And Taiwan is a democracy. So I would like to see a lot more of that going on. And maybe, a debate in the Dáil, a debate in the Senate will put the spotlight on our position. And will also put the spotlight on, what we're missing in terms of our trade with Taiwan. And the cultural exchange, I think, is so important. Young students sharing their experiences of Ireland and Taiwan is something that we can't ignore, and we should encourage and not be afraid to do so.
On your recent visit to Taiwan, you were representing Ireland as the Leas-Cheann Comhairle, which is Deputy Speaker of the House. So in effect, I guess some people might look at it as, you're the Irish Nancy Pelosi. And most people will remember when US Speaker of the House, the then US Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan in August of 2022. There was a pretty strong Chinese reaction and backlash. So I know it's been reported in the newspapers here that the Chinese embassy in Dublin have complained to the Oireachtas when previous Irish parliamentary delegations have visited Taiwan. I wanted to ask, on this occasion of your visit this summer, was there any reaction or any calls from the Chinese embassy?
There was indeed. It was very strong calls from the Chinese embassy and complaints made about the visit. I met with the Chinese ambassador, on my return from Taiwan, and I explained that I was there in my capacity as part of the Taiwanese Irish Parliamentarian Friendship Association, and that we were not dealing in the political sphere. I don't think I've ever had a political conversation out there about China's position versus Taiwan. A general commentary, yes, but not in any way examining that part of it. We don't see that as our role. We see our role as parliamentarians understanding what's going on in the world and trying to make things better. And in this case, the country we're dealing with is Taiwan. But yes, the Chinese ambassador did make complaints. I met with the Chinese ambassador and I explained everything in detail, and that's where we left it. But it was explained to me, and I want to acknowledge this, that in China, when it's reported that someone in my position visited the country of Taiwan, that's a political statement in terms of the Irish government. And it's fair to say that is not the case, because the Irish government have a different position. But it's my job as a member of Parliament and as the leader, if you like, of the Parliamentary Friendship Association, to express my views as an individual, and that's what I'm doing.
But Ireland also has an independent foreign policy, and you will often hear from the Chinese Communist Party that they don't interfere in other countries, yet they are quite willing to come and interfere when our elected representatives go and visit another country.
And I don't know, Neil, whether they complain about other European countries who do far more work, politically and otherwise, with Taiwan. Yeah. So we have to be measured about this, and we have to be realistic about it. And I find that the path that we follow in terms of delegations to Taiwan are conscious of all of that. I was speaking to you earlier about the difference this time in Taiwan, and explaining that it just didn't feel normal, but yet the people that live there feel it's normal. All of this, activity from China around them, and I have to say that I was deeply concerned by some of the signage in Taiwan, which would indicate to bunkers and shelters and so on, and their preparation, in terms of the military and mobilizing the general population in Taiwan. That concerned me, that they seem to be moving towards a defense of their position, an expectation that something big was going to happen by China, basically, confronting Taiwan or maybe invading Taiwan. And I thought that was it brings home the reality of their position to you, but it's sad to see it because of the knowledge that you'd have of meeting people in Taiwan is the direct opposite. They don't want conflict, but yet they have to be prepared for it.
Like you say, they just want to live their lives in peace. Yeah. I think maybe to end though on a positive note, it was pretty nice to see that yourself and your delegation visited, but there were other delegations that also visited this year. It was quite a few that went to Taiwan from Ireland.
I think if you look at what's happening in Taiwan with these delegations, you will see that the countries that have supported Taiwan are engaged with Taiwan. Their presence there by way of a delegation has increased. The number of delegations have increased. And I think that's an attempt by Taiwan and the other countries, including Ireland, to show that they continue to keep Taiwan in the spotlight, that they continue to want to engage with Taiwan, and that they're aware of the political situation. I think it helps the cause of Taiwan that these delegations would come and go at various times during the year and be supportive of them in that way. It's an indication that the world around Taiwan is supportive of their position.
Yes, great to see that, definitely. the one thing that people might be interested to know about also is one of those visits, I think Senator Diarmuid Wilson attended the EU Taiwan Security Cooperation Forum, and one of the interesting things they talked to that's relevant to Ireland is maritime security, and particular undersea cable security, in which Taiwan have quite a bit of experience. So it's great to see these collaborations happening also. I mean, it's not just for the sake of the visit, there are useful things happening as well.
Well, the delegations that go out there, the other meetings that are arranged by Taiwan, that Senator Wilson, for example, attended one of those events, they're hugely informative, because we're behind the curve in relation to what's happening around the world on many issues. And attending a conference there in Taiwan that is supported by big countries and small countries gives you great insight. It gives you great understanding of what's going on. And we should be at that table listening and understanding. Now, the other concern is, you mentioned it earlier, is the preventing Taiwan from participating in agencies that are looking at or analysing matters that affect the world. They have a contribution to make. They are a country of 23 million people. They are hugely active in trying to do the very best for their citizens, the very best in terms of global warming and all of that issue. They're to the fore in new technologies and education and solutions for the problems that we face, not just today, but potentially will face in the future. And they are there at the heart of all of that and developing it. We should be part of all of that discussion. And that requires us to be there, to travel there. It also requires China to understand that there is a place in the world for democracy.
That's Deputy John McGuinness, who is the Leas-Cheann Comhairle, or Deputy Speaker of Ireland's Parliament, and Fianna Fáil TD for Carlow, Kilkenny, as well as Chairman of the Ireland-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Association. My sincere thanks to Deputy McGuinness for taking the time to share his valuable insights with us on Perspectives with Nilo. So, what did you think of our conversation? Should Ireland be a better supporter of democracies under attack from authoritarian regimes and strive to build stronger connections with Taiwan? Are we losing out as a country by not selling our food and agricultural products to Taiwan like many other EU states? And should the Irish government take up President Lai's offer of collaboration in the area of semiconductors? And would this help Ireland's goal to become a semiconductor hub? We'd love to hear your feedback. Drop us a comment on our Perspectives with Nilo social media pages or whichever app you use to listen to our podcast. You can also contact us via our blog at pwnilo.com. That's pwneilo.com. There you'll also find links to the topics discussed in this episode, as well as to information on past episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode and you don't want to miss any future episodes, we'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe or follow button. This is the best way to support us and really helps motivate us to keep producing content. But that's where we leave it for now. Thank you for listening, and until the next time, Slán agus beannacht.